lifespan, blah, 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 blah.
Changes in motion.
Oh, you can't see that. Let me walk behind.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the studio. I'm Russ Edmonds, veteran animator and story artist. And today we're going to be talking about tails. Tail wagging. Wait a minute, I've seen this before. Oh, that's right, that was part 1. So this must be part 2. I better do a little review. Let's see, let me remind myself what I was thinking. We were talking about tails. We were looking at different tail language and how the animals express themselves. The height and speed of a tail is the expression. They talk visually. We went over the anatomy of a dog's tail, the pelvis and the vertebrae. I remember we used Lexi as our model. Then we observed and sketched. We looked at the visual language and found insecure, curiosity, relaxed, aggressive, excited, and happy. Then we talked about horse tail anatomy. We recognized that the structure of the horse is the same as the dog. We looked at the tail, the pelvis, the vertebrae, the same. We've talked about horses' visual tail language: relaxed, irritated, tense, and spirited. We observed, took notes, and then we sketched. This expression of the tail is the visual language you can add to your art and give it authenticity and believability. Observe, understand, and then take it back to the studio. Okay, let's see what we did. Here we go. Well, the first thing I did was looked at Ellie mostly, and I realized she was just in a happy mood and her tail was wagging, so I did a quick animation. It was definitely a happy wag. It wasn't all the way down, it wasn't down, it wasn't up, it was just kind of in the middle. And then I was then I switched over to Lexi and her big giant tail, and I was looking at how the shape was so relaxed when her tail was down. I was also noticing where the bones, you could feel her bones in her hips, and then where the break was from the bones. And I'll go over this when I switch over to the drawing. But there's a break here where you could see where the tail kind of pops out. And Lexi definitely had a very relaxed wag. It really hung down to the ground, and it would just swing back and forth. It was low, and then it actually made a figure 8. The tip made a figure 8 if you followed it. When looking down from above, you could see where that break in the tail was, where that muscle break was. So it kind of pops out from the pelvis. Here's the difference. Lexi in a very relaxed, her tail was very low, and Ellie she had a very moderate swing, and now that's a happy. So Lexi was relaxed, Ellie was happy, and then Ellie got excited, and her tail was raised up. And when Ellie was relaxed, it would really lay low. And I did kind of an animation, almost a little helicopter, where Ellie was just swinging her tail back and forth and back and forth. Oh, here I said hip changes in motion. When the hip changes in motion, it said watch the hip, because the hip is moving, and that's your center where the tail's attached, into the center of the hip where it pops out. However, when she's excited, the tail's independent. It's flipping back and forth just in excitement. Whereas if she's walking and wagging, I was trying to get this. This isn't a good example because it's better to actually animate this. But when you're walking and the hip's moving left to right, the tail will actually wag with the hip. Wag happy, happy, happy with the tip. And I was trying to get that down. It follows the hip movement. Oh, 3/4 walk. I was trying to get a 3/4 walk down. We talked about happy, we talked about relaxed, and we talked about excited. And now here's curiosity. And I didn't I never got any video of Ellie doing this, but she was leaning over and there was a jar on the ground. It was actually with some iced tea. And her tail came up, and then her tip would wag back and forth. And that's a sign of curiosity. And then her tail went down when she was unsure. She was submissive, and then her tail would go down, and then it would just wag very slowly. And then she would lean over again, and her tail would go up, curiosity, and wag, 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 wag. I got some B-roll of this of Cody. Whenever he would run to the fence, there'd be a coyote on the other side, and his tail would go straight up in the air. He'd jump on the fence, make this beautiful arc. This whole body would arc. Oh, and I did get a little bit of Cody with his wag when you're wagging right. There's this thing where they could wag right means they're friendly, and then wagging left means it's more aggressive. Then we got into horses. As far as their tail goes, they're not that long. When a horse swings his tail back and forth, you have all this overlap and drag behind with all the long hair. But I did an irritated bother who'd swing its tail this way and then back, just like a dog would get bothered. And you could see where you could see where when it gets bothered, it sticks up just like a dog. It would stick up like that. I'm bothered, I'm relaxed. Just more relaxed. And then when the horse is really, really excited, then it'll go fly in the air. I was just looking at all the great shapes of the tail, all the overlap of the tail flying around. I think that's it. Let's go to the drawing board. What do you think? Here, let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me draw this out. Let's look at the dog from a profile. We're looking at the pelvis, the leg bones, and where everything connects. The sacrum is the high point of the pelvis. And of course, you have your vertebrae running through the whole thing. The lumbar vertebrae is the front part, and then the caudal vertebrae is the tail. You could think of the pelvis as the shape of an O, a square O. It's a rectangle, like this. The sacrum is at the top. This is where everything is connected. It's where everything is fused together and fused to the pelvis. So here's the hip bone, and you can feel it on a dog. And the center of the O is where the vertebrae breaks through the outer mass of the hind end. I'll draw it in 3/4 view. The leg bone connects more in the center, maybe closer to the bottom of the pelvis. The locking point of the sacrum is at the top, in the center. This is how all the bones fit. And it's for most animals, dogs and horses, and humans too. Let's wag the tail. We'll draw a little Lexi here. Even though it doesn't look like Lexi, let's call it a cartoon Lexi. How about that? Let's draw her out and let's do a nice, relaxed, happy tail wag. I'm not going to animate the whole body. I'm just going to show you the tail wag part. Now, normally, if I'm animating a scene, I'll leave the tail off and animate the acting of the dog first, and I'll put the tail in later. I would usually put the tail in straight ahead, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm animating straight ahead. I'm not animating pose to pose. So if a dog is first animated pose to pose, I'll have to rough in between it first, and then I'll go back and throw in the tail later. That's why it's a good idea to understand how the dog tail moves so you can animate it right the first time. It saves a lot of erasing. As you can see, I'm using basic animation principles. I'm going to move the main muscle, and then let the overlapping happen in the tip of the tail. And the tip will usually make a figure 8. So there's a cute little wag. Let me go in and fix up the locking point so it doesn't wobble around. And I want to make sure the tip is making a figure 8 that I want. So I'll have to erase it back a little and go forward, making it move in just the right direction. Now this is all on 2s. If you want a tail to go any faster than this, I would in between parts and then put it on 1s. And that gives you everything you need for a cute little dog tail. I'm just making sure the thickness is the same. And that's how I would do it if I were animating a big scene for some fancy studio like Disney. Later I'd go back and clean up those scruffy lines. But I'd like to feel it out. You could say I'm more of a sculptor with a pencil rather than a great draftsman. I like to feel the shapes, feel the motion. I'm working on Ellie here. I'll do a faster little tail wag. I'm using the same method. There we go. Another adorable wag. I'm going to try to do more of an excited tail wag. Maybe a helicopter right over the top. One direction, then switch to the other direction. Kind of make it erratic. Now normally the dog would be running around. It looks kind of funny with a held cell in the background. I just want to show you how to put this together. Just have some fun. Let's do a quicker wag. You can see I'm using a little perspective, so it looks a little shorter, but it's actually coming at you. Let me show you a quick cartoon cheat tail wag. I take 2 outside extremes. Then what I'll do is put a breakdown in between, like 2/3 of the way to one extreme, and then 2/3 of the way back to the other extreme. And so it's like a fast out, slow in. Now I'm going to put in some multiples to act like a blur. You can see how it moves. If this were actual production, I'd break the cycles into many different extremes, so you wouldn't notice it's a cycle. And let me try to do this windmill helicopter thing again. See if I can get this working. Right over the top. Oh, that's silly. Let's try this. I've seen a lot of little dogs wag their tails like this, where they get really excited and it goes right over the top in one direction. Now, if this dog were moving, it would make a lot more sense. The tail can bend a lot more than you think it can. It starts bending from that break point and uses over 20 little bones to flex. Now I'm going to animate a short walk. I tried to explain this when we were looking at the sketchbook. When a dog walks, and is happy, the tail's gonna move with the legs and the hip, back and forth and back and forth. So the first thing I'm going to do is a short 3/4 rear walk going into the distance so I can see that hind end. You see me drawing the ups and downs of the walk. I'm animating on 4s, drawing those extreme stretches of the front leg and then the extreme stretches of the back leg. Now I'm in-betweening on 2s. And yes, this walk is not out of my memory, although it should be as many times as I've done walks. I'm using a walk cycle sheet that I've drawn for reference. When you animate a walk so often, you get used to how all the movements fit together. You can see how rough I work. I don't care about what my drawings look like. I just want to get it to move right. I can always make it look pretty later. If you're a really good draftsman, you could probably do this in less passes. But I sure do enjoy animating this way. It's just fun. Here's the walk, really rough. And now I'll throw in the tail. I'll feel this out. As the hips pivot, I'm going to move that break point back and forth. You can see how that drives the tail wag. The tail moves with the hip. I'm going to tie this down a little tighter. I'm just cleaning up the line, tracing over it, making sure that the feet are planted in the proper place. Now let me show you what this looks like. Now I got the tail wagging with the walk. You can see the timeline. Look at the top. My first walk was on 3s, but I changed it to 2s. I think it works better. See how the tail wags with the hip and the legs? That's what I wanted to show you. Let me show you the body language of the tail of a dog. There's the relaxed dog when it just hangs down and wags, and the happy dog, and the excited dog. And there's always the insecure dog. It's gonna hang low and wag slow. Fearful is gonna be under the body, between the legs. And aggressive is gonna arch that whole upper body. But now both the fearful and the aggressive, they might not wag, but might just hold in place. Curiosity is straight out the back with a slight wag on the tip. Then there's a wag to the right and a wag to the left. Wagging to the right is positive. I am happy to see you. You are my friend. A wag to the left is negative. I'm anxious. Now I'm talking about, when I say right and left, I mean the dog's left and the dog's right. Let's look at the body language of a horse's tail. This would be a relaxed horse, loose and down. A tense horse tucks his tail between its legs. Irritation is wagging back and forth or flicking the tail. A spirited horse would have its tail up, it's alert. And those are the general body language of a tail of a horse. If we animate an irritated horse, I'd animate it similar to a dog. I'd draw the muscle mass first before I put in any long hair. I'd lay the hair down afterwards, thinking in terms of like overlap and making great shapes. You know, let the hair twist and break apart. If this were production, I'd never make it a cycle. I'd repeat the basic feel, but change the action so it doesn't look like a cycle. And there it is, a swishing tail. Almost like a dog. Thanks for being here. Enjoy the life around you. Observe and experience, and then bring it back to the studio. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll talk soon.